Market update here on the 27th. So heavy selling the last couple of days. It didn't bottom where I thought it was going to. We actually got a this actually turned into a 5-wave move here. Show you what I mean. I actually took away all the labels because don't need them anymore. So right here, this looked like an ending diagonal, and this wave doesn't really make that much sense anyway. But 5 waves here, we pull back here. I thought that was the bottom right there, and turns into being a 5-wave move lower. So what ended up happening, so that ended up being an extension again. But what ended up happening on this wave was actually 9 waves. So if you read about Elliott wave, whenever there's an extension, 5 waves turns into 9. So I think 9 waves is the highest, but I might be mistaken. It might be, I'm not sure if you can have 2 extensions in one. I think you can only have 1 extension. So if you can only have 1 extension, it can turn into 9 waves. And here's what I'm talking about right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the whole thing looks like this. 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this right here is 5 waves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it was 9 waves long is what I'm getting at. So that means it should be finished. We should have bottomed on this wave, but that just means it's the overall wave 3 though. So we're not finished with this move. And I mean, I've talked about it many times. 347 is pretty much the minimum I'm looking for. Potentially 332 as well. I'm leaning more towards 332 though, just because a lot of these charts have more downside, a lot more downside in my opinion. So we'll see what happens from here. Remember, if we zoom out though, we're getting farther and farther down here, especially on SPY. But remember, we have the gap fill down here at 332. That's kind of one of the areas I'm looking at. It needs to hold 312, which it should. So 332 would be the overall 4th wave, and then we would get a 5th wave higher. So that could end up being ABC, or that could be the end of the 3rd wave. So meaning this is, if you really want to call this a first wave, I don't think this is a first wave. This is an A wave. So I think we're really just looking at it like this. Just one more move higher, and that's it. And that will be the C wave. So that is what I'm looking at. Over the next couple of days, I'm expecting a bounce. And that bounce probably going to go up here to like 360. What are we at right now? 355. So we bounced, pretty good bounce. Like that was a nice bounce. From 351.31 all the way to 357. That was a nice, almost like 1.5% bounce. So I'm looking for this supply zone here at 357.36. There's a gap fill here at 360. If we're lucky, we make it up here to 364. And that would be about 3% higher. We might make it to 364 just based on some of these charts. But at least we're going to fill this gap here at 360. So that is what I'm looking for over the next week or two. And then I'm looking for more downside. And I really think that it's probably going to end up being something like this. I think the 5th wave will probably be the steepest. They'll get everybody to sell before we finally just make a nice move higher. It's possible too that this turns out to be an A wave, we bounce and we come lower than that. But again, that's far in the future. Don't really need to talk about that much. SPY is a little bit different. This could easily, so I had this labeled as 1, 2, working on a third wave, but this can easily be now ABCA, pullback B, and then we basically hit the 1.61 fib. That could be the C wave. This is 5 waves. That doesn't mean that we top definitely, but it could be. If we get something like this down here to at least 416, which is the 1.61 fib, pull back and go lower, we'll say to 400, then there's a possibility that we topped out here. This was 9 months long. This was 9 months long. It's a possibility. So really, what I'm looking for on SPY is a bounce over the next week. Probably fill this gap here at 431. I don't know about 438. That's pretty high. But if we do that, 431 would be the gap fill, and then another move down. The 1.61 fib of the A or 1 wave is at 415.28. That would invalidate the move that I've been talking about, because that would get, oh no, it wouldn't. This is wave 1 right here. No, the invalidation's actually at 413.76. Yeah, invalidation's right here. So invalidation's at 414. So we can come all the way down here to the 1.61 fib, stay above what would be considered the first wave, and then still go to new highs and complete the overall 5th wave. But if it were to break into, I don't know why I have the invalidation right there. Invalidation would be right here. If it were to break into this, then I would say that it's either going to be the top right here, or we might be getting, that might be a B wave as well. It could end up being we get a C wave higher. A lot of different possibilities, but for right now, it looks like it's headed to 416 after a bounce to 431. So look for look for something like that. 416. It's a little bit lower than this demand zone, so maybe it won't make it all the way there. And then from there, you'll just be watching, are we going to get an impulse move out of that, or are we going to get a corrective bounce? And if we get a corrective bounce like that, then we should be getting another 5-wave move down, maybe to 400. And then that would be a 5-wave move, and then you'd know that we likely topped. So really, bounce, another move lower, and then from there we'll figure out if this is going to end up being the top, or we're going to go to new highs. So SPY bouncing out of demand pretty hard. So looking really good. Tomorrow I'm expecting this should definitely be an A wave or a, so 5 waves easily. Finally get like an obvious 5-wave move. So that means that we are looking for, and it hit the 0.5 fib. I would say it's more than likely going to go higher from here. If it falls back here, then you're looking at maybe something back down here to 423.40 to suck in the bears one more time. And then you're looking at a move that is going to go to a minimum of $428.78, but honestly, you got this supply zone here. The 1.61 fib is right around that area for the gap fill at 431. So I would say we're probably going to 431 in the next couple of days, maybe by the end of the week. And from there, it really depends. That would be ABC. That could be enough for a fourth wave. It could be a quick fourth wave, and then we sell off again. So just gotta watch. If it ends up making a corrective move after that, then maybe we go up here to 438. But no, the 1.61 fib would not get there. So really just 431 short term is what I'm looking at. And from there, we'll see what happens. Tesla. So Tesla went a little bit lower than what I talked about in the video the other day. Let's zoom in here a little bit. So, kind of my thesis right here. I thought this was probably the bottom, but if you look at it on the 4-hour, you can just look on higher time frames. You can kind of see that that has to be the fourth wave. I was zoomed in pretty far, and I thought that since we got into demand, that was probably the end of the first wave. But we ended up coming down lower, and actually that was pretty perfect because the length of the first wave was at 231, so it came pretty close to hitting that. Not exactly, but that enabled me to hold my puts as a hedge against my position pretty much all the way down here to the very bottom, because I knew that if it did come down here one more wave down, it was probably going to 231. So if it kept on bouncing, I did not sell any covered calls here, but now I know for sure that we bottomed. Like, this is almost 100% bottom right here. You have 5 waves down pretty clearly. And we stayed in demand, and we're bouncing out of it. So, with that being said, what is the next logical move from here? We should bounce to, I think we can bounce all the way up here to fill this gap. But we only need to go to 256. If somehow this ends up being an ABC move, then I'd be looking for 251. But there's this gap up here at 262 that you can't ignore. And there's actually is there a gap here as well? That's the only gap I see in the chart right now. So 262, and that would end up being a wave 2. Make this a little bit bigger. Wave 1, wave 2. And this is why I say that QQQ can fall a lot more, because just looking at this, we have A, B, and then we have 5 waves down. This needs to go all the way down here to the bottom of this parallel line here. So if that's wave 1, we get wave 2 here. We're going to get a wave 3 to now. I think you can go all the way down to 200. Let me see. $207 is the 1.61 fib. And if we do that, then we're looking at a bounce to about 220. And 220 would take us all the way down to 177. That's close enough. There's a demand zone right here at 180 to 186. So that's what I'm projecting, is a move way, way down to 180, 186. So that's about, what is that, like another 20% lower? So we'll see. The other possibility is it ends up being an ABC move, in which it comes down here to 205, 206. That would basically hit the bottom of this. Not quite, but pretty close. And then the whole thing would still just be ABC, WXY down here. And then if you zoom out here, could be a wave 2 of a nested wave 3. We'll see going forward, but I'm looking for a bounce. Let's zoom in here on the lower time frames. So we got 5 waves again, the exact same setup as QQQ. So maybe it goes higher from here. Maybe it comes down here to the 0.5 fib first, but it should see something to a minimum of like 246, 247. The 1.61 fib is sitting at 247.21. So I would look for it to bounce out of demand. And then from there, let's see, 247. Let's just see if that is. So that's nowhere near the gap fill. So maybe it only goes to 255. You got to be aware of that. It doesn't have to make it to this gap fill. It can fill that later. So 255 would be the 1.61 fib if this played out as an A wave. And then if we zoom out here, let's just look and see. I think 255 was about the 0.5 fib. Let's see. $256. So that would be right around the 0.5 fib as an ABC move, and that could be everything it needs to start the next move down. So yeah, that would change everything as far as the dimensions. Let's just see, 256 down to it would change them a little bit. So Tesla looking for a bounce, Microsoft looking for a bounce. Finally. And you can see this is on the 500, on the 999 day standard deviation, it's still in the middle. But on this, look how far down it is compared to other times in this rally. We're the farthest we've gone down outside of -2 standard deviations. But I'm still looking for more of a sell-off on Microsoft. Not short term though. This came down a little bit farther than expected. I still want to call this a B wave. It didn't quite get past the 1.61 fib. And it's such choppy price action. Either way, it doesn't really matter. I think it's ready to bounce. Looking for the 1.23 fib here at 328.42. That would retrace to the 0.5 fib. And then still looking for more downside down to 282. So just basically that. Apple. So Apple still did not, I mean, it bounced a little bit, but it's still down close to the bottom. This is getting kind of crazy now because I had the ABC move labeled down here, 171.80. The 1.61 fib of the A wave, it went a little bit past that as well. This is turning into 5-wave move now. So yeah, I mean, this might be going down here and filling the gap before anything. So we'll see what happens. There's a gap here at 181 and a gap here at 166. We're closer to this demand zone than we are to the supply zone. At this point, that would be almost a 6-7% gain. So Apple might not bounce that much at all. it might just stay down here and the rest of the stocks might bounce. What if Apple came down here and filled the gap while everything else is bouncing? And that allowed QQQ to get back to 330. And then Apple bounces after that. Really hard to say right now. This looks like a B wave, but it's going a little bit too far now. It did hit the 1.61 fib though. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, 5 waves here. So same setup as the rest of the stocks. Look for probably 172. Minimum of 171.66. And there's a gap up here at 175. So maybe it only makes up to 175, which is like a 2 or 3% gain. And then from there, let's see. From there, who knows? Let's just look at the short term. A lot of corrective moves could go either way. Look for 175, I would say, in that gap fill, right around in this area. And then after that, we'll have to reevaluate and see what it does. Demand zone down here, supply zone up here. Amazon went farther than I thought it was going to. It gap filled, was in demand. It actually broke through demand. So bouncing like the rest of the stocks. This actually ran past the 1.23 fib, so not really anything to go by. It's kind of in no man's land right now. My original target for the end of the move was like 122, and we basically came very close to that. So, and we've already retraced to the 0.38 fib. There's a possibility that Amazon bottomed here. It came very close to 122. And if we get a 5-wave move up here, we'll have to see. I still think there's a possibility that it could go down here a little bit farther. Maybe come down here and fill this gap at 115. That would be similar to like SPY barely holding above the first wave. So that's still possible. And that's probably actually the most likely. But it is at the 0.38 fib, so it's possible that it starts the next wave higher. Remember, there's a gap fill up here at 163. So Amazon, let's go over Meta. So Meta is falling now. And nice retracement though here after it's fallen pretty hard. And this looks very corrective. So this looks like an ABC move to me. So originally I was saying this is going to be a 5-wave move down. We might get something bouncing right here. This might turn in to be an ABC move down. So we might get a bounce like that. It might be like a WXY move because that is the structure. 1.61 fib doesn't quite get down here to 265. We'll have to see what happens from here, but I would expect a bounce. Let me zoom in a little bit. It finished at 297, so obviously a huge, huge bounce. So if it bounces from here, it's probably ABC. If we get a little bit more of a retracement back down to here, then I would say it could be, it's probably an ABC move, to be honest. There's a possibility that Meta, just based on that bounce, there's a possibility that this goes back up here to the top, just based on that bounce. I mean, we'll see what happens, but this was at 314. If this goes all the way back up to the top, 325, then we're just looking at a double bottom here. So we'd just be looking at an overall well, not necessarily. It could come down here and still get the gap. But this looks pretty good for a bounce, to be honest, because this is not a impulsive move. So really, if you're trading this, you can just buy this pullback because you know that you're going to get at least another move higher. So Meta looks really good to me, to be honest. Let's go over Google. So Google went a little bit farther than I had originally planned through the demand zone, same as Amazon. Probably going to get something like this again. So we can look at gaps. And look at that. There's a gap here at 134. Probably going to go to 134. And then fall. I would be looking for still 123. There's a gap fill right there. That works out perfectly. Meta is the only one that's really weird to me. That looks pretty bullish to me. Tesla, obviously, I said it's going to bounce and go lower. But these are all a little bit different. What else we got here? NVDA. That's another important one. I haven't looked at it all day. So NVIDIA is putting in a bear flag, honestly. Bear flag, fourth wave. Still looking for that final move down here to 380. So some of these stocks look pretty decent. The other ones are looking like they're ready to go down already. So kind of a mixed bag overall. Dollar. Dollar again can go from to 107.38, potentially 109.85. And there's no gap here, but that is the 1.61 fib. I can't wait until it starts falling. It's going to be an epic melt up later in the year into early 2024. So that's pretty much it. Basically, all these stocks are showing they're going to bounce here soon. Look for SPY to hit at least 431, QQQ to hit at least 360. Microsoft's going to hit 328, in my opinion, which is actually a pretty big bounce, though. If it hits 328, that would be roughly 5%. Apple can maybe bounce 1%. There's a chance QQQ hits 364 gap fill as well, just based on where we're at. That would be 3% higher. And then SPY, it's possible it can come up here to 438. So I'll leave it at that. That is the update for the 27th. Just look for more bouncing into the end of the week. Thursday, Friday should be green. And then probably next week too. But then I think sometime next week we're probably going to start selling off again. So that's it. Another long video. Wanted to go over some possibilities. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already. Hit that like button. Talk to you in the next video.